And welcome to. Oh, okay.
Now we're live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Videcom's Employability Matters Forum. Lovely to see you all again, whoever's out there watching. We've had a bit of a break, so this is our very first one after Easter. So we are welcoming you all back, and we hope that our usual people are here, along with maybe some new faces. Today, we are going to be talking about mental well-being and safety whilst job hunting, which I think you can agree is quite, a hot topic, especially as there have been some really sad news about a girl recently who was actually murdered in Nigeria whilst going somewhere where she thought she was going to be looking for a job. So today we have our lovely guest. Let's see if I can get her name right. It is Adanze Osomonika. She is a mental health therapist, advocate, and media personality, and she will be talking us through mental well-being and safety in job hunting. So we hope that you enjoy this session, and I am now going to be handing you over to Bumi, who will introduce us a little bit more, and we will start our chat. So please enjoy, and if you've got any questions, drop them in the chat box, and we'll try and answer them either during or at the end of the session. Thank you all, and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Lola, and thank you to everyone who has joined us. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. It's nice to have you with us. Like Lola said, we've had a little break over Easter, and we're back again now. Hopefully, as many Fridays as possible to bring the issues that affect Black and ethnic minority employees in the diaspora workspace to you here on the Videcom's Employability Matters platform. Today, we're looking at mental well-being and safety whilst job hunting. And in particular, it seemed appropriate to do so because there's been lots of news in Nigeria, like Lola mentioned, around young people going to respond to interview calls and then not necessarily making it back home. It's a big tragedy that you go out to look for work. Everyone wants to have a job because actually your well-being as a human being is tied to employment significantly, whether we like it or not. When you are employed, you feel fulfilled. You feel like a valuable member of society. So it's a natural thing for someone to seek employment, to go and answer an interview call. Unfortunately, the young lady in Yobong didn't make it back home. And in a nation where you can't necessarily depend on the government to keep you safe when you go job hunting, what do you do? And what we want to talk about today is some of the things that you can think about before you respond to an interview call, some of the things that we all take for granted. A lot of this is based on personal experience. A lot of it is based on working as an employee, working as a manager, interviewing myself. And a lot of it is also based on providing services to employees from a counseling perspective. So with us today, we have a guest who I'm going to hand over to, Adande, to tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into the chat.
Thank you, Bumi, thank you, Lola. Thank you for having me. As they said, my name is Adanze Osomonika, a mental health therapist, advocate, wellness and communication specialist, and a media personality. So, mental health, about mental well-being, as it were, is a passion as well as an occupation, but a passion. And so it's so heartbreaking to hear that people just in the bid to try and get a job, which is another thing that I'm very passionate about when it comes to unemployment. We've talked about it severally on our show, trying to encourage, graduates, young graduates, old graduates, of how to keep, being mentally sound and mentally well, even while in the struggle to get a job. So I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We're glad to have you. We're excited to have you with us. So, Lola, is it you that speaks next or is it me that speaks?
I think it might be me that speaks next, I suppose. I think we should just dive straight on in. So I was just wondering if, Adanze, you could talk us through what mental well-being actually is in job hunting. What do we mean by mental well-being, especially whilst job hunting?
Okay. Okay. So I think to even go into that, the first thing is to define what mental well-being is, because mental well-being is needed both in job hunting and basically life. And all of us, a lot of people think that mental well-being is merely the absence of mental illness, which most people identify as psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar. But meanwhile, it's not. That is not the only definition of mental illness or mental unwellness, as it were. So mental well-being is, it's the optimal functioning of your mind in such a manner that you think, feel, and act in a way that is not just your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and even your social well-being. Mental well-being is not just about what's going on in your mind, but it's about it's like a holistic thing. Your spirit, your soul, your body, everything is functioning properly. Because when just like a typical example, if you see somebody just run into the street, and start dancing or start throwing off their clothes or start, doing something, you're gonna be like, okay, what's going on? What's going on with that person? The person, what has happened, especially if it's like a mental breakdown or some kind of, wrong judgment, how will I say?
Oh, we seem to have lost
We,
Adanze.
we just lost a Danzo there.
Oh, she was right in her
And
stride as well.
she,
Oh, she's coming back. I think she's coming back. Let's see. I thought she was coming back a few minutes ago there. But I would just pick up on something that she said that I thought that's quite an interesting way to define it, is what she said about mental well-being being an optimal functioning of the mind. Would you agree with that statement?
yes, I would. It's how well can you keep your mind whilst you're looking for employment. And I think the thing that we particularly wanted to talk about is, by no means are we suggesting that people who have mental health issues can't go job hunting. They can. But what we're talking about here is making sure that you're in a place of strength. And I say that a lot when it comes to employability matters, because the moment you lose your stability, the moment you lose your mental strength, you're an easy target and you are vulnerable. Because not having a job does affect, there's one thing it does for you, especially in counseling. One of the things that we do when we're assessing people is we ask things about their networks, we ask things about their employment, what do they do? And it doesn't even necessarily mean just going out to be doing a job. Are you volunteering? And the reason why you've got to do that is because, one, it takes your mind off a lot of things that then become a problem, that then eventually breaks you down mentally. Also, what it does for you having a job is it makes you feel valuable. And that's what I was saying earlier. It makes you feel like you're contributing to society and you're doing something for yourself. It builds your confidence. Confidence is the biggest thing when it
Yeah.
comes to either having or not having a job. When you are when you're employed and you have some degree of earning power, that gives you the mental stability in terms of confidence, and you feel good within yourself. And you know how it is when you feel confident about yourself, that gives you an extra boost and it kind of motivates you. However, when you haven't got a job and you're looking, and then you're in that place where your mental well-being is starting to feel challenged, you start to lose your confidence, you start to doubt yourself, you start to not feel as valuable as everybody else, and all sorts of things start to go wrong. And what then happens from then on is you start getting into a position of desperation. Anything that comes, I will do. Anything that comes, I will take.
Yeah, that
And
is true.
and unfortunately, the world that we live in at the moment, the good, the bad, and ugly are out there. And one of the tools that we all rely on for jobs is social media. And social media, sadly, was one of the things that contributed, or if you like, was a vehicle for this young lady who eventually did what all of us would do: respond to an interview call. She went there and
Yeah.
basically met her end. So the point I'm trying to make there is that there are things that we can do because we can't stop looking for employment, and young people will not stop looking for employment. Even old people, we're always looking for jobs and things. But there are some things that we can do to stay safe. And the first thing is to keep hold of your mental well-being, keep hold of that confidence that you need.
Okay. I'm just going to stop you right there because you're kind of going a little bit into the next part of the discussion. I just wondered whether Adanze is in the waiting area to come back in. Has she managed to get back in? She hasn't.
No,
Okay.
she's not.
All right. So
No.
we'll continue, but just hold that before.
As if by magic.
Yeah.
She popped
Okay.
up.
So let's just hold that thought back there before you slip into the next bit.
Okay, I'm going to bring her back in because she just popped in.
Okay.
Hello, welcome back.
Yay, you're back, Adanze.
I don't, the network I was using just cracked up. So that was it. I don't, oh my God, this normal is crazy.
Just
Oh
fling you
wow!
out.
Like,
So,
oh Lord.
well, we're glad that you could make it back in.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
So you were in the middle of telling us. So I think what I had asked about what was mental well-being in job hunting. So you had begun to define that a little bit, and I
Yeah.
picked up on something that you said that I thought was really interesting. Is that mental well-being being the optimal functioning of mind? So I think Bumi elaborated a little bit on that. So I was just wondering whether you could sort of marry the two, so mental well-being and job hunting. How important is your mental well-being when you are looking for a job, basically?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm also talking from like
Oh no!
She's gone again.
It's gone again! Oh no, not today, Satan.
Not today, Satan. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay. So I think maybe if we continue our little chat, and if you just watch out for Adanze coming back, and then maybe we can go back to some of the points we've raised. Maybe. I mean,
yeah.
is she out or frozen?
She's
Can't
frozen.
tell.
She's not out. She's just frozen. So we can carry on. So Lola,
Okay.
have a quick look in the box before we go on because it looks like there's quite a few bits in there.
How do you mean in the box? Are you talking about the? What do you mean? You
Comments
mean
box. Sorry, the comments
yeah,
box. Yes.
there's lots of people saying hello. We haven't had any sort of questions yet, so
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I
All
think
right.
people are just listening. So I think we can continue, and then we'll either wait for Adanze to come back or wait for some questions or comments to come up.
Yeah.
So we were talking around mental well-being in job hunting, and you were saying that basically, in order to successfully job hunt, you need to be of sound mind, and you need to have mental well-being. You know, you need to be well mentally. I think something really interesting that you brought up was about the use of social media. And actually, I wanted to raise something based on that. I responded to a comment on social media about a job interview that had gone out on WhatsApp. This was not here; it was in Nigeria. And so, what the poster of this post had said was they were upset with the way that the lady had responded because she responded very casually. What I pointed out was I thought that WhatsApp was not the appropriate channel to advertise for a job. I was then sort of not necessarily shot down, but you know, in a roundabout way, I was kind of told off, and it made me think: is this like a common thing in Nigeria? Because actually, if somebody sent me a job on WhatsApp, I wouldn't necessarily, it's not necessarily that it wouldn't have been a genuine offer, but I would just be thinking, if you do your business on WhatsApp, I don't really know how serious of an organization you would be, and I would be more cautious. I think if you sent me a link to a website via WhatsApp where I could download an application form, that's better. But is this like a common occurrence? Do you know? I don't know. Is this a common occurrence to send job, applications or to show interest in a job via replying to some random person on WhatsApp?
So because it's the common thing that's done doesn't necessarily make it right. And
Exactly.
unfortunately, that's that thing that I started talking about, the desperation.
Hmm.
So I would see that you've done it before and it seemed to work for you. And I need a job. Just okay, it works for Lola. So I'm just going to do it as well. And then it becomes culture, it becomes behavior.
Hmm.
Now, for me personally, WhatsApp, anything that, and this kind of is taking us into where we're going with the rest of the conversation. Anything that doesn't leave an e-print behind it when you're looking for a job, stay away from it. Literally stay away from it because it can only lead you to one place.
Hmm.
And in the links that I sent you earlier, there's quite a few bits of guidance there. So, a good organization, a legitimate employer, will have a presence in this digital age that gives you, the potential employee, the reassurance that they are legitimate. So, if I looked at something, if I sent you something on WhatsApp, Lola, and I said, this is a job, it should be taking you to somewhere, at least a website that then tells you a bit more about this employer and it gives you assurance and it validates what you're about to do in terms of looking for employment. If
And
it's a case of, go on.
no, I was going to say, I think this is what I was trying to point out in the chat, that actually everybody's having a go at this girl for saying the way in which she responded to this was inappropriate. She responded as if she was talking to one of her friends. And actually, what I was trying to say is, let's take a step back, people. Is it actually appropriate to put a job, a prospective job on WhatsApp? And I was kind of shot down that, well, is it because it's on WhatsApp that it's not a real job and I've got a real job through WhatsApp? And I was saying, okay, but my point still stands that to me personally, if that came to me, I would be thinking, yeah, no. If you were sending me the link to an application form on WhatsApp, that's a different thing. But actually advertising the job on WhatsApp and that's the only way, and then expecting somebody to text you back the response, to me was not acceptable. But I also accept that I do not live in Nigeria at the moment, so maybe that is how they do things. But also, the way you said, just because it's the done thing doesn't mean it's the right thing. And if
And
anybody's watching me, I am paying attention. I'm just also manning WhatsApp and sorry, not WhatsApp, Facebook, and trying to put links in. I'm not
yeah.
I'm
And,
not paying
and,
attention.
and the thing about this is that when you're in a place where jobs are few and far between or it's difficult to get jobs, you tend to end up in different kinds of practices that may not necessarily beneficial. And that is, therein lies the problem that we have. Of course, some employers might have got into the habit of doing that. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. And there are some risks being taken because what you're looking at is people who infiltrate that sort of environment and will use that as an opportunity to exploit other people or will use that as an opportunity to lure people. So the point I'm making here is that always make sure that you first of all check out if to see if it's a legitimate job. And the way to do that is one, try and find out if there is a website. If you're going to use social media for looking for jobs, I always say start from the top and work your way down. So if you send me a link and you say, here is a job, or you say to me, here is a job on WhatsApp, I will go look for the CEO of that organization. And I'm going to split this in two because there's large organizations, there's small organizations, and there's individuals. So I'm going to look for the CEO, see who they are. And for a reputable organization, you will quite easily find their CEO somewhere, LinkedIn, on their own website, and you start to get a sense of who they are. Years ago, about 26 years ago, when I first started applying for jobs, the internet wasn't as it is now. In fact, there was no internet. So you walked around and went to the job centers to look for jobs. Remember the cards that they had in the window, Lola? I don't know if you ever got to do
I
that.
remember those
And yeah,
cards.
so you'd look at a card in the window and then you would go into job center, they'd sit, and they were the only ones that had the computers then. So what they used to do then, and this is where you get your assurance that they will ring up and then the person that they rang up will then invite you in. So already there is some sort of middle party that helps you again to assess the level of risk. That's the second thing, middle parties. If there's a middle party, use that as your way of working out if this is legitimate or not. If you encounter just the sole individual on social media who then says to you, come to this place, check it out. Try and check them out before you go there, because I'm not wanting to sound as if it's a one person or one man band, then they're no good. There are some good ones out there, but there are ways to make sure that you check. Um, I would ask people questions, because again, years ago there were times when you saw little cards in the shop window this time, not
Yeah,
necessarily in the
yeah, I
job
remember
center,
those.
and it would have a little number, and it was a landline. Then there weren't that many mobile phones, and you'd ring the landline. Landline indicates that you're going into somebody's domain to go and see them. So I used to ring the numbers and would have a conversation, and the way they responded back told me to go or not to go.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's really important to do things like check. And this is where the mental well-being comes in. The need for a job is very important. But when we get to a place where we're so beaten down and we become desperate, that's when we start to see things and we take anything and then we go. So always check. Now, Adanze is back. So
Oh,
I'm
good.
going to bring her back in the studio.
Quick, before she goes again.
Here she is.
It's a
Hi.
crazy night. Oh, goodness. I can't even guarantee it's going to stay. I'm trying two different networks, The third one is completely out of it. So I don't even know what to do at this
That's
point.
okay.
Well,
That's okay.
so
Yeah,
but
so we
basically,
go on.
okay, but basically, this is the first thing though. I say a lot of people feel that having a job is the same thing as their self worth, which should not really be the case, because that's what leads to all the desperation and, oh, I don't have a job, I feel so useless, I feel so worthless, I don't have a job, I don't have a job, and then that's when the situation, somebody can easily sell an idea to you and tell you, okay, no, come for this interview somewhere, this thing is happening, and at the back of your mind you feel this sounds a little, but the desperation now far outweighs any other sane thought. So I tell people that the first thing is to have a healthy mindset about the job hunting process in the first place. Like, okay, I need a job. What kind of job do I need? Right? Is the job I'm meant to go for now? Is it like, maybe the kind of job that's going to just tie me on for a while? And then what happens, while I'm waiting for my dream job? People need to have clarity, when it comes to things like that, understanding. And then, this issue of job hunting is not just at when you're just out of school. There are even stages in adult, later adulthood, where you now find yourself in between jobs, and I saw that kind of situation when I was talking to some elderly staff of MPA, and some people were saying they didn't know what they were going to do if this job even ends now. They don't even know what they're going to do. There was a man who had gotten retired, and instead of facing the retirement, he kept coming to work even after they had retired him. He didn't know what to do. So I say a lot of individuals like that, they're working day to day, but they have no clarity about themselves, why they even did this job for all these years, what they should be doing. Some of the factors that show somebody is experiencing optimal mental health is that you're positive, you're confident, you're in control of your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. Right. So at this point, and then and how do these feelings, the way you feel, the way you think, the way you act, how does it tie to the WHO has like about 5 factors that show that you're experiencing optimal mental health. I even added a few more to them, and one of them is being productive. Are you productive irrespective of not having a job? Right? Because some people spend that time, I'm waiting for the job, I'm applying, and I'm not doing any other thing. So I'm not trying to work on myself. I'm not trying to, get more knowledge about anything. I'm not even picking up any hobbies. I'm just like waiting for this job to come. So that part, if you're not productive, that's a problem. Yeah. Then it's also coping with the stresses and the challenges of life. Optimal mental health means, okay, this issue of the job has come. It's a stress, it's a challenge, right? But how positive am I as I'm facing it? Am I going to be, because we even tell people that, okay, at the end of the day, when you've maybe you've gone through the day, you've sent out applications, you've done a lot of stuff. In the evening, you should be able to say words of affirmation to yourself. Remind yourself of who you are. Remind yourself of how, what a beautiful person you are, a worthy person you are. Because you see a lot of people, they don't think that well of themselves, right? They feel that they need to find their identity in their job. Your identity is not in your job. Your identity is within you. It's within knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing what you're meant to be doing here at per time. Oh, I'm meant to be going, this is the phase I'm going through. Or, I mean, what if you had to stop a job, for example, and go back to school? Would you now turn your whole life upside down and say, oh God, nobody loves me now because I'm not working? Because these are cases that I've come across where a friend of mine had to go back to school, and he couldn't earn during that time, and he saw so many people just drop him. He felt so bad. He couldn't tell anybody how he felt, that guys were not reaching out to him again just because he wasn't working at that time and he was back in school, and his mental health began to suffer. So these kind of things, we need to have a positive outlook, even when it comes to job hunting. A level, like almost like a level-headed outlook at it. Oh, I know I'm going to get the right job for me. And whatever job I even have to do at this particular time, you see people doing menial jobs, and they are so angry when you encounter them, and it's like as if you are the reason why they're doing this menial job, But you see some other people, they're so positive, even despite that the job is horrible, but they're so positive. And you can imagine, you even feel like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this kind of job. I can give you an opportunity. Opportunities even come when we are depressed, when we are anxious, when we are stressed. We do not give out the right energy that attracts what we even want. It's when we are inspired, when we are joyful, when we are at peace, we begin to attract the kind of things we want. Right. But when we are like in a state, I don't know when I'm ever going to get a job. I don't want to, I just don't, it keeps happening to me. I'm such a loser. Because that's how mental illness works. It kind of like makes things as if they're like global problems just because you're trying to get one job. And maybe some people rejected you. You suddenly just equate it as, oh, I'm a loser, I'm a total loser, and which ought not to be. So the kind of way you're thinking at this time, you still have to be positive to attract the kind of job you want. People need to understand the importance of joy and inspiration, because it's the energy that you give out. Even in mental health, we say it a lot, it's the energy that you give out that brings in the right things to you. But when you're giving out energy of desperation, automatically these people, these fiends, these wicked people who are out there, fake people, they actually know when somebody is desperate. And if they just send so and so message to so people, they cast out their net. They send you this text and say, appear at so place tomorrow. The job, they even throw in what the salary is, what the lie that the salary is. And people look at say, oh my God, I need to go. And they borrow transport money, everything. They get there and they never come back home. So another thing is, as you're even thinking of all these things, as you're stressed out about the job, talk to someone, reach out for help. Don't sit on the island and just say, no, I'm going to just, I'm going to be strong enough to handle this on my own. Talk to someone about it. You might find out that someone else has gone through something like this, and they may have a positive thing to tell you, to encourage you. Okay, you can do this while you're doing that. Another thing we advise people to do is volunteer work while you're waiting for the job. I have a friend I knew a lady who jumped into, she discovered her love for NGOs. She didn't even know it before. She wanted to get into HR, and she saw an opportunity to volunteer in an NGO. And when she volunteered, she now discovered her purpose, that, oh, wow, I love doing this. I love helping people. From there, she even traveled abroad because she was such an excellent worker, even as a volunteer. A better opportunity came and she left. So we always tell people that your mind is really important, especially when it comes to job hunting. How clear are you about the kind of job you want? How clear are you about where you're going? Have you mapped out your life 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then are there other things that make your life full? Because the job hunt can consume one, and you discover that you're not thinking about any other thing. And you're not even thinking about it in a positive manner. You're just thinking, God, when am I going to get a job? When am I going to get yeah.
I was going to say, I suppose the job thing, when you think about it in this sort of hierarchy of needs, it's difficult to think about anything else when you don't know of how to earn any kind of living. And a lot of earning a living is tied into a job. Without the job, you don't have a living. Without a living, you don't have where to live. And without a place to live, you can't think about food and all those sorts of things. So it all ties into this thing about, if I am doing something, if I'm occupied, like you rightly say, not just working, volunteering, or hobbies and things like that, it keeps your mind in a healthy place, and it prevents you from getting into that desperate place, because it's the place of desperation. And it doesn't just apply to work alone, anything. The other place where people tend to get desperate, I find, certainly in Africa, is, oh, I'm not married. And then any old person that comes along is suddenly a good one. It's suddenly a good one. And it turns
Yeah.
out that they have their own motive or whatever. So it's important to be able to keep that healthy mind and to be able to strengthen your mind every time. Lola, is there anything in the box that anyone's saying? I'm seeing some things, but I can't
Yeah,
see who's
there are some things in the box actually, and I wanted to point out an issue because actually, funny enough, so we have someone called Conrad who has had a few comments and questions. So I will just quickly say what I was going to say because it links into one of his comments. So I also wanted to
Okay.
put out there that, we talked about, I think the two of you have talked about desperation and the fact that, when I think you mentioned it for me, that if you don't have mental well-being, you can become a little bit desperate and then you don't think about your safety. But I think on the flip side of that is to also understand that maybe sometimes you might be mentally well, but it could just be actually the fact that you need to get a job, and perhaps you just, because again, like we were talking about when Adanze was kicked out, that because it's the done thing, a lot of people do these things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. But this is how it's always been. And if you are going to get a job because a friend of yours knows somebody who knows somebody, and they say, well, just turn up here at 9 o'clock, you're going to do that. But it doesn't always imply that you yourself are not, mentally well, if that makes any sense. And I'll link it to Conrad's
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
So the first question, I don't know if I understand actually, but he said, my thoughts are, is it not a safety issue if one does not tick on the form the health challenges for fear of being told to resign? But I think that's safety in another context,
in another
perhaps.
dimension.
It's
So
it's
not
not in
so
the
not
context of
wanting, so deciding how much information you declare
it.
health
Yeah,
wise,
yeah,
so that you either retain or don't retain the job. And to some degree, that's safety around retaining the job,
yeah,
as it
yeah,
were. And
yeah,
again, this depends on where you are in the world. In some
yeah,
parts of the world, you have supportive employers who want to know what your disabilities or what your health issues are, so that they can support you. In some parts of the world, you can't declare these things because there are no laws that protect you, and potentially you do lose the job. So it's a difficult one, and it's based on where you live and the laws in that country. That's what will
yeah,
protect you or not
yeah.
in those
And
kind of
I,
situations.
I would agree with that. But actually, if you do have a health condition in a country where the laws work, they should actually accommodate you, and they're not allowed to discriminate against you based on
Against
those
you,
health
yeah.
conditions. Um, and then the other thing that he said also is, secondly, is, oh, hang on, is it not a mental imbalance to say without precision that I'm willing to do anything? I'm
So
not sure
we're
that
not
means.
necessarily
I'll hand that over to you two.
So we're not necessarily talking about mental imbalance here, because there are different levels, and that's why we say mental well-being as opposed to mental illness. And mental well-being is when your mind is in a position where it's sound and it's comfortable, and you're doing the right things, and you can detect risk. So we're not necessarily saying you've got some kind of psychosis or something that prevents you from functioning. We're talking about being able to assess risk, being able to detect, being able to know when to hold on, and being able to wait and think things through. So it's that sort of mental well-being, sort of really lower level stuff. If we're talking about mental health or mental well-being, that's what we're talking about, Conrad. So we're not necessarily talking
Yeah.
about imbalance at all. We're just talking about wellness. I don't know if that
And
makes sense.
I've got another comment from Abimbola. I was wondering if Adanze might have something to say about this. So she says, the pressure put on us also makes people become desperate and accept anything offered to them. When someone does not have a job, he or she may be looked at or addressed or labeled as somebody lazy, and people look down on them. Aside from all of that, sometimes somebody has typed and pushed the page up. Aside from that, sometimes any job may be better than nothing if it meets needs. However, a plan
Yes.
of getting the kind of job you want or the place you really want to get should not be missing. In other words, keep the job if it helps, but have a plan to get the better one, or the one that you are really worth, or that
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get carried away with what should be a stepping stone. I think
Yeah.
oh, Adanza is gone again.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Sorry. I think Bimbo's really right there, because usually, and I think this is one of the things as well that kind of holds people in a difficult place. You don't always get your dream job the first time you move out to go and look for a job. You don't. There is a job, and there is a profession, there is a career. So sometimes you need a job before you get a career and before you get a profession. And that kind of helps you to tide things over. So you get that. But what we're talking about here is even in places where you don't even get the job before, never mind the career or the profession. And it's when you don't even get the job, that's where the desperation kicks in, because you can't even begin to see any kind of future about, okay, I've got the job, and when I save X amount, I can go on and study this and get this career. You can't even do that. And that's why people get desperate.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just read out a couple more comments, and then I was thinking maybe we could talk about, examples of what we can do to keep ourselves safe, I guess, because we're talking about mental well-being and safety. So Akin Benjamin says, desperation has kept Nigerian teachers and workers stuck in abusive, toxic work conditions. Survival. I have no comment on that. And Binkwe has sort of echoed what we said, that, well, in the US, no employer is allowed to sack an employee on the grounds of health. That can be reported, except if determined that one is a risk to others. So that's that,
Absolutely.
like we said, if you are in a country where they actually have strict laws in place, employment law should protect you, really, and there should be provisions if you have any kind of health issue. So I was going to ask, moving the conversation along, because we're talking about well-being and being safe. So what do we think, what is safety, and how do you maintain safety when you're job hunting? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So safety is, it's as simple as, I'm going to look for a job. When I get there, or before I get there, have I done any risk assessments? So the thing we were talking about right at the top, we were talking about look for footprint, look for the CEO, start from the top and work your way down. Understand if this organization has got any kind of presence on social media. So if it has no presence on social media, everyone's got presence in social media, even people with the dogs. Their dogs now have a social media presence. So an organization that's employing people should have one as well. So if you can't see any social media presence, then start to think differently about whether you should or shouldn't. That's the first thing. Then as I say, second one, the CEO, because if you can't find the CEO, if you can't access them to ask any questions, then start to think risk. Start to think red flags. And when you're thinking red flags, doesn't necessarily mean that actually when you get to the end of all of this, it's like, oh my God, they're terrible. It might not just be that. But what the red flags do is they help you to wait. They help you to pause before you jump in. Because again, that desperation that we keep talking about is the one that makes us jump in and go, yeah, it's a job. I'm going to go and do it. So think in that kind of way. Adanze is back.
Yes. And that could actually.
I don't know. I really don't know. Oh gosh. Oh wow. Oh, I
I, I,
apologize, ladies. Maybe we have to do
I,
this again. Actually, but
I'm going.
anyway.
So
I'm
I
going
was
to
going to
very.
say,
Oh,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to
I was going to say I was going to
finish
bring
it.
her into the safety very quickly before it happens again.
Do you want to do
Okay.
that?
Well,
What,
so
what, what,
Adanze, just before you came back on, we were talking about safety, because, as you know, we're talking about mental well-being and safety in job hunting. So we sort of moved the topic along, and we were talking about what do we mean by safety in job hunting and how can we maintain it. So we're wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
No, I think it's like I think I heard a bit of what Bumi was saying, but I think one of the things that really helps is check who are the people that are telling you about the job opportunity. You know, because like I still remember I was writing on social media about my one of my first real job opportunities, and it was a friend in church who I knew had a real job. You know, and he said an opportunity had come. The people were in Abuja. I should head up to Excellence Hotel or something like that and be there. And I was like, okay, fine. And I could take his word for it because we knew it was going, but everything was fine. Everything was fine. So that's why I think who's telling you about the
Yeah.
job, and you get exactly, because I saw who. Okay, I'm here. I think it's instability that's worrying it now or something. But can you guys still
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are rumors now of somebody. There was a guy they wanted him to come and speak in Lagos, so they paid for his flight, promised him accommodation, picked him up at the airport, and he found himself being held for ransom. Apparently, this happened in Nigeria not too long ago. And this is actually a speaker, even a known person. So the security level is really, really bad now. So I think before anybody tells you there's a job opportunity somewhere, who is the person giving the information? Who are you meant to meet at that place? Because the showing up to a place, maybe on the outskirts of town, you've never been there before. I even tell people that if they invite you to a place, try and go and scout. Don't go in there entering the place. Go and scout the area first. See if the office actually exists. Is it a real company? Before the interview time, right? To make sure that this is real, this is legit, and then you can now tell somebody, oh, I'm going to so place, instead of just show up there and then walk into the lion's den just like that. I think we all have to be a little careful. As much as we want a job, we still have to maintain that restraint a little bit and like, okay, it's because if you lose your life at the end of the day in looking for the job, everything becomes pointless at the end of the day. So there should be some kind of level of balance, being level-headed
And
about it.
I suppose, like they always say, hindsight. In hindsight is always a great teacher. In the ideal world, there's no reason why you would expect another human being to kill you just because you went to look for a job. And
Yes.
there is a part of you that says, you know what? Nobody would do that. In fact, your mind would not go there. I don't think anybody's mind, because when I started looking at this topic, actually, I was thinking about sexual exploitation, because that's what we knew. Where people would say, "Oh, bring your CV to this place," and you take your CV there, and then they'll be, "Well, if you don't do this, then you don't get a job." And then you do it, and then they hand you to the next person who says, "Well, if you don't do this." So that's what I was talking about, and that was the level of badness we were dealing with once upon a time. But clearly, people have taken this behavior, and they've stepped it up. They've stepped their game up significantly, and it's just completely worse. So nobody would have thought that sort of thing would happen. Um, and so,
Yeah.
to some degree, this almost is looking like a new menace, almost of sorts. And I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe it's always happened, but social media
Yeah.
there was no social media. But because we've got social media, we're knowing a lot more quicker and knowing things a lot more quickly as it happens.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's why this has come out into the open. And so there is a bit of this where it's just so sad. It's so sad. I understand a young man as well got shot somewhere because he went to look for a job as well, and he got shot by the police. So it's almost as if there are lessons for the people left behind. Unfortunately, people have had to give up their lives for the rest of us left behind to learn those lessons. You
Yeah.
know?
And I
Yeah.
think one of the points that you just raised now, Bumi, with social media, I think social media has made everybody so much more accessible. It's very easy to get hold of somebody. If you Google somebody, you can find their pictures on Facebook. I still am amazed at the amount of people who do not have privacy on their Facebook settings for certain things, or on some of their social media. If they don't need, if it's a personal account, there should be a level of privacy. And when you
Yeah.
don't have that, you open yourself up. So even just keeping yourself safe on social media is probably something that we all need to be looking at. And actually, we also need to be thinking, how safe are we really? Once we put our lives out on social media, how safe are we?
Yeah.
So it's all those
Yeah.
kind of things combined. So I have a comment from Bingwe, who is saying, "You're so right. The lady who was murdered recently could have avoided her death if she stopped to think on this. We can't be so desperate that we throw our safety out the window." I mean, obviously, we don't really know the ins and outs of how she came to be where she was, but on some level, I guess there was maybe some issue with perhaps not thinking it through, and
But,
kind of.
I beg to differ to some degree, because she put some thought into it, because she had told a friend she was going. The friend was able to, they were able to have a conversation, I think,
Okay,
when she was starting to suspect that something wasn't going right, and it was the
right.
friend
Okay,
that then
fair enough.
alerted the police. So she
Yeah.
did put some thought into it, but I
Okay,
suppose
fair
yeah, but I suppose for us who are left behind, the question is, should we go at all? And I think for me, when I was younger, because I started job hunting about 19, and one of the things was, you know what? If it so much as smelt a little bit whiffy, I am not going. I didn't go. But then
enough.
there were places that I got to as well, having thought I'd done my due diligence, and I thought, how on earth did I get here? And how do I start to backpedal quickly before I get into any more deeper waters? So it's just about thinking and arming ourselves with particular thinking and sort of mindsets before we go out to
Yeah.
respond to people. Personally, what I would also say is I never respond to adverts or interviewed by an individual. I don't do that. I would go with an organization, because it's so much easier to be able to check
Yeah.
them out. And one of the things that I always do is I always case the joint. I always go and look. I always go, I walk around, I see what it looks like. Because the other side of this as well is, apart from them sort of doing anything to you, you get a sense of the kind of employer these people are, whether you
Yeah.
even want to work with them or not. So I always go a week before, a day before, just hang out at
Yeah.
reception or
Exactly.
something and
Exactly.
look and see. Because when you go with organizations who employ, or who have more than one employer, then you get a better sense of things. But that solitary individual, where he picks you up from social media and says, come, nah, never a good one.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or text from unknown sources, because that one happens in Nigeria a lot. You just get a text telling you there's a place, come, and then I mean, it's crazy to even respond to those kind of texts. So
Yeah.
so
I think even
really,
here, and
yeah,
some of the
I agree.
links that I sent to you, Lola, some of them, because our issue here is scammers, people who harvest your identity and empty your bank account. That is another way of
Oh
doing
my,
it. Yes. So the,
God.
when you have time, I think Lola's put up a few links where you can just go and read and see what people do in different parts of the world in the name of providing employment, and they're fake. The other thing as well, in terms of information that Lola has put up, is a link that people have been uploading a lot of the fake employers that there are across a number of the states in Nigeria.
Oh,
You
that's
can
very good. Yeah, that's very
Yes.
good.
So before anyone goes off to look at a job, you can always go and look at that list and see if this name that you've been mentioned, or you've been told rather, is on that list.
Yeah, so I've just put up a few more, I think. Yeah.
That's
So
extremely good. That's even and then I think we even advise people to look out for such information. If you have job hunting,
So I think we seem to have covered quite a lot. I think basically, to summarize, we have expressed how important it is to have mental well-being and how that links to being safe while we're job hunting. We've talked a lot about how desperation can affect your mental well-being, and we've had some practical tips to try and keep ourselves safe. I think I think the one thing that I would bring out of this also is just really trust your instincts. Like you were saying before, if something doesn't sound or feel right, it probably isn't. Something sounds too good to be true. It probably is too good to be true. So regardless of how, yeah, regardless of how desperate you might be, trust those instincts. Don't think, well, I'll go and it should be okay. Nothing should be. Do your groundwork beforehand. So I was just wondering, Adanze, do you have any sort of final words to summarize what we've been talking about today?
Okay, no, the final words, is just your job is not your worth. That's one lesson have for the rest, for the rest of your life. Your job is not your worth. So try to be as positive, do things that make you happy. Still find stuff that make you happy, even while you're job hunting. Sometimes happiness is not always expensive, as it were. A walk, the beach, a book, use that time to discover yourself. Oh, knowing that by the time you get a job, you might not have as much time as you want, so treasure the time that you have now, trying to discover yourself more, what you love, what you like, so that by the time you're even getting into the job, you're getting a whole individual who is excited about work and wants to be productive to the organization, not someone who just, oh, thank God I got a job, and he just gets in there and everyone's okay, what is this? What did we hire? But I think it's just working on yourself. You should still continue self-development, personal development, even while job hunting. Yeah, even while job hunting. Yeah, that can be very good.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think that's.
So sorry for the network drama. Oh,
No,
God.
you handled it very well. We're just glad that we actually got you back, and you didn't disappear forever. Bumi, have you got any final words to say?
Yeah, what I did want to say was that there is something for everyone out there, but what's most important is some degree of patience, and it's so much easier said than done. I know you say, "Oh, be patient," but actually, while you're waiting, there's so many other things you could be doing that actually contribute towards you being a credible employee. Um, if you can find space to volunteer, then volunteer. If you can find space to go online to learn something new, do that. There's lots of free software, lots of free courses, lots of things that you can do online. And forget that you might be wasting time, because I hear a lot of people when I'm coaching people, especially young Nigerians, they tend to say, "Oh, but Auntie, that's a waste of time. How is that going to help me to become?" And I'm thinking, you have no idea how long it took some of the people who are now coaches to get to the place where they had to coach you. And sometimes when I tell people, because there's something called self-disclosure in counseling and sometimes in coaching, and I tell them where I started off from, they're like, "Yeah, right, okay, yeah." That actually everybody started from somewhere, and eventually you can build up what you want, but you have to start it from the scratch. So not all of us, some people are fortunate enough, they hit the ground running, they get what they want, and it's all wonderful. But some people are not that way. You've got to take your little steps to be patient as you do that, because what is yours will eventually come to you.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
I think that is the perfect way to end things. Say what is yours will eventually come to you. And I'd like to thank our guest tonight, Adanze, who has managed to cope beautifully with the failing technology that she now has its head in shame.
Well done.
And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and also Bumi as well for putting together a lovely, very informative and interactive session. And we hope that you will all join us again for the next live. And thank you for your comments and questions. So we wish you all a good night, and have a lovely weekend, and take care, guys.
Thank you, Lola. Thanks.
Thank you, Lola. Thank you, Bye.